Okay, hello. This next lecture will focus on Chapter 7, which will highlight some specific types of interviews that professionals will need to conduct or engage in throughout their professional careers. So all types of interviews are really fact-finding or information-gathering missions. So you have your more investigative interviews that, for example, reporters might need to conduct. You have your survey type interviews that researchers, social scientists conduct, such as psychologists, etc. You have your more diagnostic types of interviews where a doctor might conduct an interview to try to diagnose a health problem or any type of problem. Even at political sciences might try to diagnose a particular type of social problem. You have your general research and then type of interview where you're gathering information for the purposes of research for maybe a grant or some type of academic or research. And then you have your exit interview, which employees often conduct when leaving or exiting a particular organization or job. Your approach when conducting an interview, you're generally going to collect background information before you actually begin the interview. You're going to define your interview goals, as we've discussed in Chapter 6, and you're going to identify questions beforehand. You're going to choose the appropriate interviewee based on the particular type of information you're trying to gather. So depending on the type of information you gather, that determines the person who will be the most appropriate interviewee, of course. Career research interview is one type of interview that many of you will be engaging in, and this is where you're exploring research options, exploring research opportunities, and generally trying to find information out about a particular career path. The value of personal context cannot be stressed enough. It is often said that your net worth is your network. So the people you know will often be the people who will bring you career opportunities. So you always want to start with where you are in terms of your classmates, your professors. Those are some of the people who have had a chance to see your talents, see your work ethic, and who can maybe connect you with other people on a career path. So when conducting a career research interview, you will need to choose appropriate interviewees and contact those interviewees. And you can actually, for example, if you want to work as a organizational consultant, it's a good deal to use your network and maybe ask a professor of organizational communication to connect you with someone who is successful in the field of organizational consulting. And then you can contact that person and request an interview so that you can find out more about what the day-to-day life is like for an organizational communication professional. And then you follow up. So conducting interviews to learn more about a particular career path is one type of interview that you will be encouraged to conduct as you embark on your professional career. The employment interview, of course, all of you have probably participated in some sort of employment interview on or off campus, or you soon will be preparing to conduct an employment interview. Of course, you want to utilize the Career Services Office on campus, as they have more extensive tools to help you to prepare for your employment interview, and can even offer a mock employment interview whereby you do the full interview and they offer feedback on your strengths and weaknesses and identify areas of improvement. The mock interview is one of the best ways to prepare for the employment interview. In general, though, there are a few steps that all people preparing for an employment interview need to complete. Some pre-interview steps, let's talk about those. Conducting background research on the company. Obviously, you're going to identify as much information, learn as much information from the company's website, from possibly speaking to people who have formerly or who currently work for the company, from talking with even competitors about what they know about the company. You're going to conduct some background research. Contact the potential employers, obviously through cover letter and resume. And the purpose of the cover letter and the resume is to get the interview. Of course, the purpose of the interview is to get the job offer. Other pre-interview steps include preparing for the format. Once you're offered an interview, you want to ask about the format. Will the interview be a panel interview whereby maybe a panel of people, 4 or 5 people, are interviewing you? Will it be a stress interview where you're placed in kind of a simulated environment and the employers are trying to see how you respond in a stressful situation in real time? Will it be an audition type interview where you're asked to perform? Or will it be a behavioral type interview whereby you're asked a series of questions of what will you do in this situation to assess not what you think, but to assess what you will do and how you will respond in specific types of situations. Each of those different formats require different types of preparation, so finding out the format for your interview is a very important step when preparing for the employment interview. You always want to think constructively regardless of the format of the interview. You want to prepare and think about ways to constructively demonstrate who you are and what you can offer. And of course, the interview is just as much about finding out about the company, finding out if that's a company you want to spend your time and energy with, as it is about the company finding out about you. So you want to think of the interview in very constructive ways. Try to avoid being stressed. It really is an extended conversation designed to assess if there's a goodness of fit between you, the prospective employee, your talents, skill sets, backgrounds, attitudes, and behaviors. If that's a goodness of fit between you and the company in terms of their values, their organizational culture, their history, and their future. Okay, so now you've accepted the interview, you understand the format, you've prepared, you've gone about your preparation in very constructive manners, in a constructive manner. During the interview, here are some key things you want to do. You want to plan, anticipate effects. This is not just a general conversation. There are some key points of information that the company wants to find out about you. So you want to anticipate key questions, such as be prepared to share specifics about your educational background, including key courses that have helped you prepare for the particular position you're applying for, your work experience, and not just in terms of I held this position at ABC Corporation, but really think more specifically in terms of what did I contribute at ABC Corporation that I can share. You want to think of specific stories and situations whereby you made a difference, you made a contribution, you thought outside the box, or you some way proved to be an asset for that previous employer. You want to be prepared to talk in specific terms about your career goals, both short and long-term career goals, your personal traits. What are your personal strengths and weaknesses? We all have them. What is during the interview, you want to be prepared to demonstrate your the research you have conducted on the company and demonstrate your knowledge about the organization as a whole and about the position or job in particular. During the interview, you also want to respond to the employer's needs or concerns. Employees, in addition to wanting to know if you have the competence, the skill level to contribute, if you will know how to do the job, they also want to know who you are and will you fit in with the team. For example, are you a team player? Are you reliable? Do you have a strong work ethic? Are you emotionally intelligent? Do you manage your own emotions well? Do you interact constructively and professionally? Are you detailed oriented? So be honest as you answer the questions, and you want to emphasize the positive. At the same time, you want to be humble and aware that there are some areas that you're continuing to work on. During the interview, you want to back up any of your answers with specific evidence. You can't just say, or it's not very credible for an employee or an interviewee to say, oh, I'm just the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, what do you mean? First of all, you might want to index that and say something like, well, yes, I'm highly skilled in the area of analysis. And then you want to back it up with specific evidence. What makes you say that? Give some specific examples of why you believe that you are highly skilled. What are some previous examples? Have you won any awards based on your analytical abilities? Have you earned high grades in courses that require a lot of analysis, etc.? So when backing up your answers, think of the acronym PAR, P-A-R. You want to identify a problem. For example, maybe there was a need for someone on a team at a previous job to analyze a situation, and then you want to describe the action that you took, and then share the result, the consequence of your action. So you want to prepare evidence of claims that you make about your skill set, about your abilities during an interview. And you want to do this in a very concise manner so that your answers are very brief. You want to be enthusiastic while doing all of this. You want to come across as a person who is alive, who's engaged, who's passionate, who is going to contribute and add energy to a team. You want to be sure that you also prepare questions that you want the interviewer to answer, and you want to rehearse your interview with a friend. Again, utilize the services of Career Services Office for a mock interview, get feedback, rehearse in front of a mirror. The interview is a type of performance, and so all performances are enhanced through practice and rehearsal. So you definitely want to rehearse your employment interview. So you've had this great interview. The next thing you need to do is to think up of the post-interview follow-up. And how do you follow up? A thank you letter, which demonstrates courtesy, reminds the employer of you, keeps your name in the face of the employers and in the mind of the employer. You want to provide any additional facts that maybe after the interview you recalled that you didn't include. A reminder of any promises, and correct or clarify any misunderstandings that occurred during the interview. During the interview, it's very important for you to be aware of certain legal, laws that you need to be aware of that impact the employment interview process. The first thing you need to be aware of is the BFOQs, which is an acronym for Bona Fide Occupational Qualifications. In other words, there are some cases whereby discrimination is legal. Discrimination based on age, weight, gender, for example. And so it's on the employer to prove that they have a legitimate or bona fide reason for making age restrictions or gender restrictions or even religious restrictions necessary for a particular position and type of employment. So if you are asked, for example, well, how many children do you have? Generally, that's not a BFOQ. There's no bona fide reason why someone would need to have children. And so what are your options if you're asked questions that you believe fall outside of the realm of a bona fide occupational qualification? Let's see. So before, I have been asked many years ago, how many children do you want? I remember being asked that question, and luckily I had done some research, so I realized that I was in no way obligated to answer that question, as that inherently is an illegal question. So my response was that I am available and plan to have continued availability for the hours required for the job. So I kind of switched the question from the number of children I was interested in having, which is personal and illegal in nature, to a question to reframe it to focus on my availability, which is a legitimate question or concern that an employer might have. So when responding to illegal questions, you have the option to answer or not answer the question. You have the option to seek explanation. So in other words, could you tell me exactly what information you're trying to find out about? You can ask the employer for further explanation, so that you can answer the legitimate question versus the illegal question. You can redirect the question, as I did in my previous example when I was asked about how many children I was interested in having, or you can refuse to answer. That is within your legal rights to refuse to answer, but of course you want to think about how you go about refusing to answer that. Of course you could say, I'm not clear on how this question relates to the job, or you can just say, no, I'm not going to answer that. Of course, when you just say, no, I'm not going to answer that, you are within your rights. However, that type of response tends to put a strain on the relationship, and if you're so turned off that you're no longer interested in the company, that's fine, but for the most part you all will have the effective communication skills to navigate that situation. And just to give you a couple of examples of when an employer might have a legitimate reason for having gender quotas, for example. I know in the correctional facilities and as well as mental health institutions, most of them are segregated by gender, with males and females separated. And so in those industries, there are bona fide occupational, gender is a BFOQ, meaning they do have to have a certain amount of women working in the women's department, or the women's section of correctional facilities, or the women's section of mental health facilities, and the same with the men's section. So that's an example. Another example, there are several examples relating to age. In order to be the President of the United States, there's an age requirement. I believe pilots over the age of 60 cannot perform as a captain. So there are particular jobs that have bona fide occupational qualifications. There are jobs with weight restrictions, flight attendants, for example. So again, it's on the employer to justify any BFOQs. based on the job requirements and the particular position. However, it's on the employee to be aware of BFOQs and to know how to respond effectively when an illegal question is asked. Okay? Yet another type of interview that you'll encounter during your professional career is the performance appraisal or the job evaluation interview. This is a type of interview that lets the employee know where he or she stands in the eyes of the upper management or supervisor or leaders of the organization. It's also an interviewer that helps the employee develop his or her skills, professional skills, and improve the employment relationship if it's conducted well. So it's a particular type of communication where basically the company is giving you feedback, or almost like a professor giving you a grade, except it's an employer or supervisor giving you feedback based on how you are doing, what your performance is like, and what your overall effectiveness, your effectiveness is judged by the company at a particular point of time. So the performance appraisal interview is another type of interview that you are very likely to have periodically throughout your career. It helps the management learn your perspective, so it's very important for you as an employee to contribute and be participative in that interview and let the employer know how you feel about the company as well, what you need to be supported and what you need to be successful in the position. And the interview usually allows you time to set goals for your future in terms of how well you want to perform with the company in the future. The steps in the appraisal process include reviewing progress you've made on the job, discussing successes, problems, and needs, setting goals, and reviewing and responding. Okay, so those are some of the specific types of interviews that you will have during your professional career, and utilize the interviewing skills that we've discussed in chapter 6 and 7. Also, always utilize your research skills throughout any type of interview. Any type of interview that you may have. There is tons of information online, tons of sample interviewing questions, tons of YouTube videos that help you prepare and identify how to respond to specific types of interview questions. So with your enthusiasm, your constructive attitude, and your research skills, and the knowledge we've covered in chapter 6 and 7, your interviews will be very successful, and I wish you well. Thank you.